Well, hello, everybody. Mike Townsend and Tamara Splitter from the American Cycling Network. We have got a great subject today. In fact, it's very relevant to some things, and we'll talk about it in a minute, but it's very relevant to some people I've been riding with lately. One you may have heard me mention, a guy named Dallas. We'll also talk about a guy named Ben. And then Jason's not with us today, but we'll actually talk about Jason a little bit too. And I may have to look at my phone because I had sent him some questions and he texted me back a few answers. But before we get started, hey, Tamara's with us. We're blessed to have her. She's a licensed cycling coach with the USA Cycling and the United Endurance Sports Coaching Academy. She's coached various athletes at the national level. She's also a triathlon coach. She helps qualify athletes to the World Championships, and she's also a lifetime competitive athlete. She is involved in virtual cycling as a ride leader and racer with the U.S. military esports. And as an athlete, Tamara lives for challenge in both endurance and climbing, and in both the IRL and virtual. Her website, I highly recommend you go to it, is ignitesportsperformancecoaching.com. That's ignitesportsperformancecoaching.com. We'll also put that in the description. So today, and by the way, welcome, Tamara.
Thanks, Mike, for having me.
Today, we are going to talk about the occasional cyclist and how they get to be a habitual cyclist. And so, just a real quick personal story for me, it was I was a runner. I was having to go to my chiropractor, and I was always training to get faster in a half marathon and in a 10K. My 10K kind of time was around 48 minutes and change. My half marathon time was an hour and 49 minutes, and I hit my goal there. But I must say that it took its toll on my hip and my knees. But I mean, I wasn't, it was just aggravating. So I got into cycling and built up to where I could ride 100K. And that's, to me, that's equivalent to a 13, to a half marathon. But it was just, I got hooked. And I got hooked when I got my first road bike that I'd owned in maybe 40 years. And I looked down at this Garmin watch. I was doing 24 miles an hour with minimal effort, it felt like. And I got hooked really quick. So, Tamara, the first question we want to ask is what is the difference between a habitual and an occasional cyclist in your definition?
Um, a lot of it is to do with consistency, but also, in my opinion, identity. So occasional riders, they like to, ride when the weather's good or when their schedule is open or they get a burst of motivation, right? Habitual riders, it's part of their lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's just built into their day, it's built into their week, they plan it. They don't say, it's more about they say, how far are we going to ride? When are we riding and how far are we going to ride? That kind of
Yeah.
thing. That's the attitude.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. So, as a coach, when you look at cyclists who start off casually, what do you think initially draws most riders into cycling? What do you think the draw is?
Um, Probably wanting to get healthier and transform their current, body shape or whatever it may be. A lot of them will do that, and they want to do something that isn't going to beat up their joints. If you look at the demographic of cyclists, the majority of them do tend to fall in that over 45 category.
Hmm.
A
Yeah.
lot of them have done other things, and now they're looking for things that are a little bit easier on the joints, much like you talked about running, right?
Yeah.
You'll find a lot of ex-runners have gotten into cycling.
Yeah, that's good. And I asked Jason what caused you to become a habitual cyclist, and he responded with my name. He said Mike Townsend, and I laughed, and then I said, "No, serious. I need this for my talk with Tamara today." And he said, "Well, I think there's several factors." He said, "Friendship with other riders." He said,
Yeah.
"Cycling is not as impactful on your body as running." And then he said it helps him stay healthy. He enjoys being outside, and he appreciates the opportunity to be competitive. And so I thought those
Yeah.
those were good answers. You
Community plays a huge role in cycling. I do find that whether it's virtual or outside, I do find that there's the community aspect draws a lot of people in.
Oh yeah, yeah, I think
Yeah,
so too. Like when we met in Helen a few weeks
yeah.
ago, it was just getting to meet Rob and just getting to ride. I mean, it just felt great to get out and ride with
Well,
you guys.
and nobody really understands why you're dressed in spandex other than a fellow cyclist.
Yeah, that's true. That's so true. Or if they see you at the beach with that cyclist tan,
Right?
they
Exactly.
don't,
Yeah.
they don't understand why you
Yeah.
got this tan from just up above your knees, down to your ankles. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's funny. What's the number one reason you think a casual cyclist, why they struggle to become more consistent?
Usually they don't have a plan. So life will happen,
Yeah.
work, kids, whatever. And because they don't have a plan, it's not habitual, they just put it to the wayside. They lose their motivation. They don't have the feedback from maybe a mentor or a coach, and they lose it. So I do find that, but it's much the same in a lot of other sports too. When someone takes on a new sport, they're very eager, right? Because they see a lot of we talked about this a little bit earlier too. They see a lot of gains or they see a lot of improvement, and it's exciting off the get-go. But then things do stall, right? They seem to plateau, and then they don't know what the next step is, and if they don't have someone encouraging that or advising on that or motivating that, it's very easy to stop.
Okay, very
Yeah.
good. All right. What patterns or mindset shifts do you typically see in cyclists who successfully make that leap from casual to habitual?
So it just becomes a part of their life, much like brushing your teeth, like
Yeah.
it really does. It's just, well, I'm going to go ride today. Like it's never a question of, it just, they have a plan. It goes back to having a plan. It's the whole attitude of, I've got so many miles I want to ride this week, or I've got, an event that I've planned that I want to train for. It becomes very outcome driven, I guess, is the way to describe it,
Yeah.
rather than just, um, yeah, outcome driven would be the best way I would describe it.
That's that. I'll bring up Dallas. He's your new one of your newest clients. He's one of
Yeah.
my clients. I do some coaching for a lot of his people, and he has visited with us here 3 or 4 times, and I got him into cycling by riding my very heavy Cannondale trainer bike, out on the road, and he did very well. I will say that when I rode with him down in Albany, after we rode, it was pretty warm. It was pretty warm that afternoon. It wasn't really hot, but it was warm enough for him to go do a cold plunge in his swimming pool. And he had his swim trunks on, and I got to say, when I saw him without a shirt on, I was like, wow. I mean, this guy is. I mean, he looked like he could be in a magazine. His body was just in very good shape. Uh,
Hmm.
he definitely has got cyclist legs, but it
Hmm.
but it took, the reason I connected you two is because the last time he was here, we're riding in zone one and can barely stay in zone two, and he's in zone four,
Yeah.
and can't really keep up with us. And
Yeah.
we want him to, we can't draw all the way back and do that very often because there's absolutely zero benefit physically. Of course, I enjoy spending time with him and talking to him, and so there's some benefit there, just the camaraderie. But as you
Mhm.
know, most competitive cyclists, if they give up a day, a couple of hours like that, it's hard. And so,
Well, time can be precious, right? When you've got a
yeah,
full work
yeah,
schedule and yeah.
yeah, yeah. So
Mhm.
we came to the understanding that when we looked at his numbers versus my numbers that day, and we sent them to you, is that at the end of the day, his cardio was way out of shape for somebody who's
Mhm.
40 years old and looks like he looks. And because
Mhm.
he's in the gym, he hits the gym, and
Yeah.
I asked him, why cycling for him, and his was the same answer as mine, is that he wanted to do cardio, but his knees doesn't hurt when he rides a bike. like they
Yeah.
do when he would run. And so yeah, that's and that kind of brings up this next point because he and I talked about how much better you feel. So for me, I'm gonna do this 6 days a week because, and it's hard, but
Mhm.
but the benefit, Tamara, far outweighs the time sacrifice and the logistical sacrifice that we run into
Yeah.
sometimes. Now, let's face
Yeah.
it, there's some days where, man, I try everything I can to get on, if I'm not outside, to get on the trainer. We do try to schedule a couple of days a week to be outside. Saturday's a big long ride day for us. But there are times where it just, for whatever reason, doesn't work out. But
Right.
but I do know this firsthand, that the emotional benefit. So the next question would be, uh, how does a cyclist's emotional or physical state change once cycling becomes more ingrained in their lifestyle? What have you seen?
Well, I mean, just like you just talked about too, it seems to be like an outlet for stress. I know for me, if stress or, things are a little bit overwhelming or whatever,
Hmm.
a good hour on the trainer where I can let all that out does a miracle, right? So a lot of people do find that. And then also like seeing it, the physical part of it too is seeing yourself get stronger, seeing yourself, make gains, seeing yourself be there. You actually get less fatigued when you're more fit, right? A lot of people walk around thinking it's normal to, lack energy and to feel a certain way. And then when they start incorporating a lot more habitual physical fitness into their lives, they get a burst of energy. Like you actually feel better, right?
Yeah.
So there are a lot of the benefits of that.
Yes. Very good.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's good. Now, this next one is a good question. One of my favorites. Discomfort is a big part of cycling, especially early on. What types of discomfort do you see most often in newer cyclists or developing cyclists?
So physically, a lot of sore legs, a lot of saddle pain,
Yeah.
and a lot of burning on the climbs, right? So they're not conditioned for any of that.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of the sore legs, and the saddle pain, unfortunately, a lot of people don't go and get a proper fit,
Yeah.
which I can't stress enough that a proper fit is
Yeah.
critical.
That's right.
Otherwise, it's not going to be a very well, you're not going to hit the numbers either, right? Like
Right.
a fit, just a few millimeters can make a huge difference in how many watts that you can put out or how long you can spend on the trainer, or that kind of thing. So, but mental too, doubt, comparison, frustration, all of those things. They're not used to pushing through challenges.
Right.
Without an immediate payoff, right?
Yeah.
So those are
Good.
all the discomforts that I do see.
Yeah.
Yeah, so physical and mental.
Yeah, that saddle and bike fit's a big one because I know Dallas, he had to go through a couple of saddles to get it just right.
Oh
And
yeah.
and of course his bike fit, he got a bike fit. He was good, but he had a little bit of knee pain. He had a tweak on his bike fit and the knee pain almost went away. So I know it's important to get the fit. I mean, it's for sure. I mean,
Very important.
yeah. What about how do you coach riders to mentally approach discomfort so that it becomes a stepping stone instead of a barrier?
Um, Not to fear it, to reframe it and more as feedback, right? So I coach them to work on staying present in the moment rather than fearing what's coming up. So they may, open up their training peaks and they look at their workout and they're already dreading the whole thing. So they're already in the wrong frame of mind from out of the gate, right? So to welcome these things and to realize that they're making gains from these things, just to reframe the whole thing rather than approaching it with fear.
Yeah, that's good. So, if you could give one piece of advice to a casual cyclist who wants to build a real habit and embrace the uncomfortable moments, what would you tell them?
Ride, even when it's just a little inconvenient.
That's good. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We talked about that off camera. The one the ride I told you where my shoulders were just really in pain. I pushed through it so that I could get to that century mark. But yeah, I think it's worth it if we can understand our bodies, know our bodies, push our bodies to that limit. And I was telling Dallas this too. I said, "Well, Dallas, you've never seen me go full gas on a ride." I said, I said, if we get a video of my senior Olympics ride, my 3 mile time trial, I said,
Hmm.
you're going to see me almost die to try to get 6.5 minutes in that 3 miles and in that 3.1 miles. So I said, that's where you'll only see me go full gas. And I mean, I'm talking just, I'll do a few every now and then when me and Jason are out riding, we're kind of cutting up, but I just don't want to hurt something, unnecessarily hurt something unless I'm competing. And then I'm still a little more careful because I told you about the time where I was getting that KOM that we got
Yeah,
in it, and I felt like I pulled something in my glute, and then later I kind of felt like it was maybe more toward my hamstring a little bit. But
yeah,
it did keep me off the bike for about 4 or 5 days, which is it's pretty humbling, when you want to be on
it
there
is.
every day and get that sweat going and get the brain fog out and just really push forward. But anything else you want to add before we wrap
Well,
up?
yeah, I think it's important. Like if you're always waiting for the perfect weather or the perfect time frame or the perfect motivation or the perfect energy, you just never going to get it done, right? So you just have to, in order to form a habit, I mean, I've always said, to form a habit, you've got to consistently do something for at least 21 days.
That's right.
And after that, it's a long enough time where you can start to see some results. You're getting used to this is part of your daily or whatever ritual that you
Yeah.
might have, right? And so that's half the battle is just to show up and just start doing it and stop waiting for the perfect whatever it may be.
Yeah, that's good. And I did want to mention you and I talked off camera earlier this morning, and we talked about before we rode up in Helen. You had sent me a training plan on Training Peaks, and I joked with you while I was on one of the down parts of one of the intervals, and I sent you a text and said, "I think you got me confused with Greg." Greg's 38, I'm 57. And so I thought, wow, she's giving me a training plan. I'm sitting there typing it, so she's giving me a training plan that I think she thinks I'm Greg. But I say that to say it was so hard that had I not had, and we haven't used this word yet, it's a great word. I use it in coaching leaders all the time, and it's accountability. It's
Yeah.
it's giving someone an account of your ability. And
Yeah.
so I was able to get through it, even though two and a half of those four intervals, I felt like I did okay. The other, two intervals, I really sucked at, because I just the fatigue, just not being able to push it like I wanted to push it to please my coach. And so I think having a coach, and if people are listening, and you're questioning it, they should at least get, to talk to you. They should set up a time to spend 30 minutes on the phone so that you can talk to them about goals, where they want to be, in 6 weeks or 8 weeks,
Mhm.
or I've
Mhm.
got 12 weeks now before the Senior Olympics,
Mhm.
and so there's just this uh, struggle, I think, sometimes because sometimes people just don't want to be accountable. But see, had I not had you as holding me account, if I hadn't had you holding me accountable, I would not have finished that interval. As I told
I
you
know.
earlier, I would have gone on to
Yeah.
another ride and
Yeah.
it was easier. I might have pushed it a little bit, might even tried to PR on a segment, on Zwift, but I certainly wouldn't have pushed it as hard as I did. And
I I mean, over the years, and appreciate the fact I've been at this for 30 years. Woo, aging myself here, but um, I do hear it quite often on the comment section. I'm
yeah,
sorry, I didn't want to disappoint you. Sorry
yeah,
if I disappointed you, kind of thing. And I mean, we have to reframe those things too, right? Like a failure isn't always because you didn't bang off the workout,
right,
100%. We look at all the factors, right? But yeah, I mean, when you have a coach, the client usually does take that quite seriously. They don't want to fail. They don't want to disappoint me, right?
good. That's very good. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time
Thanks.
today. Mike and Tamara from American Cycling Network. We hope you guys will like the video and share it and subscribe, pass these around. But thank you so much for your time today, Tamara. I enjoyed it.
Thanks, Mike. Have a great
So,
week.
yep, you too. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.